Today we have Nathan who came first to our locals, playing, what deck are you playing, Nathan?
So I was playing My Spin on Red Pterosaur deck. It's kind of like a lot of the ones you see online, but I've changed it up a bit to suit my playstyle just a little bit more, coming into the aggro to mid-game plays. So we start us off with just our simple 1-drops. So we play 3 Rain Needles and 4 Overaptidons. The reason why we'll do that is because Overaptidons are such great value cards to help pay for later on cards, and Rain Needles are just perfect early game damage. They're also really good sacrificial pieces in the mid game when you stop needing the Star Dragon tag. So after the value we get out of our 1-drops, we start coming into our stronger presenting cards. So with cards like Dynaman Tyrannoid, who are one of the best turn 1 plays in the entire game, just because they start out at level 3, 6,000 power with 1 core, makes them the best blocking power against a more aggro deck like yellow. Dilophosa is just one of the strongest cards in the game currently. He can't block, which makes it always a safe bet to attack with. And with his stats, there's not a lot of early game cards that can really push over him and stopping us from getting our value. So we play one more 3-drop in the deck, and it's, in my opinion, one of the best cards in the game. Although it's skillless, the Bearded Eagle card actually has some of the best stats across the entire game. For 3 resources, reduction 3, you get a 1-drop 3k, and at 2 cores, it turns straight to 5,000 power. After that, one of my own spins that I don't see a lot of people playing is the Ankylosaur Gaston. He's a 4 reduct 4, which means in the mid game, he is coming out for free. You don't have to waste a resource on him. And the reason why I play him is because a lot of lists were using lower cost cards that weren't of the Emperor Beast or Pterosaur key tag, which I found bog down your mid game to late game turns when you don't need those key tags anymore. It's just a waste of a draw. So these are our more lower cost red Pterosaur cards, plus the Rain Needle Star Dragon. They're just in there for the 1 reduct. Quality cards, you can sacrifice them in the mid game to bring out your bigger cards. And speaking of them, so in the mid to late game, we're trying to push more stronger damage. Your white decks will have set up their Enterprises and their million blockers. It'll be very hard to push through, especially with their Nexus control at that point. So at that point, we've got cards like Nebula Dragon Andromeda, who can really help deal with some annoying blockers on the board like Steam Otter. It can also help push through a Nexus, like a purple has it, or some white lists have their big Nexuses out. Really useful to getting rid of them. And then the king of the deck, the reason why you play it, we have the Jurassic King Gigano Red. This card makes the deck. It's the reason why we play Pterosaurs. If all of your cards on the board are the Emperor Beasts or Pterosaurs, he goes straight to level 3, and he's reducted almost all the way because he reads them as 2 reduction costs in play. He is a confronting level 3 10k attacking card who gets buffed to 13k the second he attacks. There's no other card in the game without buffs that can block his attacks. So to start us off with our Nexus game, we have the 4 of Scorched Battlefield. Scorched Battlefield is just a really good turn 1, turn 2 play, should be on most of the game. It buffs your entire board by 1k when attacking, and if you give it 2 cores, it can get some really needed draw potential power. Very good value in this deck. We have our Volcanic Canyons at a 2 of. The reason why we have it as a 2 of is because I'll never want more than 1 on the board. I don't want to burn through my deck too quickly, but every now and then getting rid of like an early game Rain Needle and being able to keep a Dilophosa on the second draw is very much wanted into our magics. So we start us off with a 4 of Starblast Draw. The reason why we play that is pretty simple. You can pay 2 reduction to, or pay 4 reduction 2 to draw 2 cards. And if you're up against yellow or purple specifically, you can put it in your burst and try getting an extra 2 cards out of it. There's a lot of value in those. I wouldn't see myself really ever putting it in the burst pile up against red or white. There are a few when summoned cards in those decks, but like my list and a lot of the white lists I know, they're not relying on those effects to push anything, so I feel like you might not even get the chance to play the Star Blast out of it. Then we have our more simple draw power, which is just charge draw. This card is the same as Star Blast, it's 4 reduct 2, draw 2, but this one has another use for it besides laying it in burst. You can actually keep it in your hand and use its main/flash to buff a card by 2k, and sometimes that can really make a difference in pushing over some damage you wouldn't have otherwise been able to do. We run our 4 ofs of the Absolute Ice Shields. The reason why we do that is pretty simple. Most decks are doing it right now. What this card basically says is you can attack as much as you want this turn, and you might not die the next turn, given that you've got the resources to pay for it in your opponent's attack step if they're going to push you. So after the Absolute Ice Shields, we've got our other 4-off magic card, which is the Burning Force, and some would say the driving force of the deck. Can really help keep your opponent in check. Against purple and white, you're really looking to remove their nexuses because they can be very damaging to your own plays. And then just a simple 2-off we put into this deck is actually the Volcanic Break. The reason why we've got 2 Volcanic Breaks in the deck is because occasionally, when trying to push through certain cards, especially on white, you need to be able to reduct them or neg them to be able to actually kill them rather than going through battle. So now that we've got our main board out of the way, let's start going into our sideboard and some of the other potential threats to this deck. So we start us off, a really big threat to these early game to mid game potential aggro deck lists is purple. For that reason, we add 3 Head Ice Maiden Fullers. All this card will do will keep 1 card on the board for you, and it'll also help keep a card of your choice, which is normally a Gigano Red or a Bearded Eagle in the early game, and it just stops purple from being able to sweep you like they often can do. We started off with 2 Dual Gun Mechlord Dome Diners. This card can push through in the late game when your opponent's whiteboard is unbeatable. I'm talking the double Elks with the Enterprise, the Pegakiones. The other card we tech in for white is actually the Wonderland Alice. This card can really help in the late game push through a lot of their cards, because as we know, Enterprise doesn't give armor yellow, so you can get rid of a lot of their blocking power if you've got the board set up to do so. The deck we need to tech on the least is actually the yellow deck, and all I've really done for that is just 2 counter swords. You know, we're trying to get rid of their Michaelas if that's the variant they're running. The second they'll play them, they'll be able to get all their magic cards they want, which will then bulk their hand with magics, and we're trying to get rid of that Michaela as soon as we can. So, thank you very much for having me on here. It's a pleasure to be here at Grimdark Gaming. It's an amazing space to be. It's always made me feel welcome, and everyone else that I know that comes here. Got to shout out the owner of the place, Brandon Sassoli. Scariest man you'll ever see, but with the heart of pure gold. It definitely helps me come into the gaming space a bit more and be more confident about what it is we have fun here with. So thank you very much for wasting your time listening to me ramble on, and hope you guys have a good one.